Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is a story that I found for Orange Goblin. Orange Goblin is my friend. He's called Fred. And it's from Belgium. So it is a Belgian fairy tale from 1916. So if you listen Orange and you recognise it, maybe it's changed over time, I don't know. But hopefully you will know. I will try and pronounce the words the best I can. The Last Adventure of Phil Ulenspiegal. Ulenspiegal and his wife Nellie, always young, strong and beautiful, since love and the spirit of Flanders never grow old, lived peacefully in the Tower of Neer, waiting for the wind of liberty to rise, after so much cruel suffering, and blow upon the land of Belgium. Ulenspiegel had begged to be appointed commandant and keeper of the tower, saying that, as he had the eyes of an eagle and the ears of a hare, he would be able to see if the Spaniards should attempt to reappear in the liberated provinces, and then he would sound the charm, which is the Flemish tongue means the alarm. The magistrate granted his request, and for a good service he had done, he was given a florin a day, 2 pints of beer, beans, cheese, biscuit, and 3 pounds of meat a week. Thus, Ulenspiegel and Nellie lived in ease together, seeing afar with great joy the liberated islands of Zeeland, meadows, woods, castles and fortresses, and the armed vessels of the beggars guarding the coast. Often at night they went up on top of the tower, and seated on the platform, they would talk of fierce battles and happy loves past and yet to be. Hence they looked down at the sea, which, in the warm summer weather, broke into shining ripples of foam along the shore, throwing them upon the isles like phantoms of fire. And Nellie trembled when she saw over the polders the Willo the Wisps, which are, they say, the souls of the poor dead, and all those places had been battlefields. These Willo the Wisps flitted from the polders and ran along the dikes. Then they returned to the polders, as if to loath to leave the bodies from which they had come. One night, Nellie said to Ulenspiegel, "See how many of them there are in the Drievland, and how many high they are flying. I see most over the Isle of Birds. Will you come there with me, Dill? We will take the balm that shows things invisible to the mortal eyes." Ulenspiegel replied, "If it is that balm which made me go to the great Sabbath, I have no more faith in it than in an empty dream." "You must not deny the power of charms," said Nellie. "Come, Ulenspiegel." "I will come." The next day he asked the magistrate for a keen-eyed and faithful veteran to act as his substitute, to guard the tower and watch over the country. Then he set out with Nellie for the Isle of Birds. Making their way through fields and by the dikes, they saw little verdant islets, encircled by the waters of the sea, and on grassy hills that reached as far as the dunes. Innumerable plovers and seagulls, which, keeping quite motionless, made as if were white islands with their bodies. Thousands of these birds are flying overhead. Thousands. The ground itself was studded with nests. Ulenspiegel, bending down to pick up an egg, saw a seagull flying towards him, uttering a cry. At this call, over 100 came, uttering cries of distress, hovering over the head of Ulenspiegel and over the neighbouring nests, but not daring to come too close to him. "Ulenspiegal," said Nelly, "these birds are asking us to spare their eggs." Then, beginning to tremble, she said, "I am afraid. The sun is setting. The sky is white. The stars are waking. This is the hour of spirits. See the red vapours that are rising from the ground. Still, my beloved, what monster of hell is opening his fiery jaws thus in the twilight? Look how the Willo The Wisps are dancing over Philip's land, where twice the bloodthirsty king put so many poor creatures to death to satisfy his cruel ambition. It is at night that the souls of poor men who fell in battle quit the cold limbo of purgatory and come to warm themselves in the mild air of the earth. Thus is the hour when we may ask anything of Christ, who is God of the good magicians." "The ashes of clays lie on my heart," said Ulenspiegel. "What would Christ could show us those 7 whose ashes scattered on the wind would make Flanders and the whole world happy." "Man of little faith," said Nelly, "the balm will enable you to see them." "Perhaps," said Ulenspiegel, pointing at Sirius, "if some spirit should come down from that cold star." Whereupon a Willo the Wisp fluttering around him lighted on his finger, and the more he tried to shake it off, the closer it clung. Nelly, going to help of Ulenspiegel, also got a Willo the Wisp on her hand. Then Ulenspiegel, striking at his, said, "Answer, art thou the soul of a beggar, or art thou a soul of a Spaniard? If thou art the soul of a beggar, go to paradise. If thou art the soul of a Spaniard, return to hell whence thou camest." Nelly said to him, "Speak not harshly to the souls of the dead, even if they be the souls of our executioners." And, making her Willo the Wisp dance on top of her finger, "Willo the Wisp," she said, "dear Willo the Wisp, what news do you bring from the land of spirits? How do they busy themselves there? Do they eat and drink, seeing they have no mouths? For you have none, dear Willo the Wisp. Or do they take human form only when they enter into the blessed paradise?" "How," said Ulenspiegel, "can you waste your time talking to that wretched flame which has neither ears nor near mouth, nor to answer to thee?" But Nelly, heeding him not, spoke again. "Willo the Wisp, answer me by dancing, for I will question thee 3 times, once in the name of God, once in the name of the Blessed Virgin, and once in the name of the elemental spirits, who are the messengers between God and man." And this she did, and the Willo the Wisp danced 3 times. Then Nelly said to Ulenspiegel, "Take off your clothes, and I will do likewise. Here is the silver box containing the balm of sight." "It's all the same to me," said Ulenspiegel. Then they took off their clothing, anointed their bodies with the balm of sight, and lay down side by side on the grass. The seagulls moaned, the thunder muttered in clouds, whence flashed the lightning. The moon showed the golden horns of her crescent, but dimly lit between 2 clouds she was. Then Ulenspiegel's and Nelly's Willo the Wisp went off to dance with the rest in the meadow. Suddenly Nelly and her lover were seized by the huge hand of a giant, who tossed them up in the air like children's balls and caught them again, rolled them one upon the other, and kneaded them in his hands, threw them into the pools between the hills, and pulled them out all covered with seaweed. And, as he thus whirled them through space, he sang in a voice that roused all the seagulls in terror. "Read, flee, the mystery. Read loud the sacred word, which in air, sky, or earth by 7 nails is anchored." And indeed, Ulenspiegel and Nelly saw on the grass, in the air, and in the sky 7 tablets of shining brass fastened by 7 flaming nails. And on the tablets was written, "Sap germinates in dung hills. 7 is bad, but 7 is good. Diamonds issue out of coal. Stupid doctors have wise pupils. 7 is bad, but 7 is good. And the giant went along, followed by all the Will-o'-the-wisps chirping like crickets and saying, "Look at him well. He is their great master, Pope of popes, King of kings. He takes Caesar out to graze. Look at him well. He's made of wood." Suddenly his features changed. He seemed thinner, great and mournful. He had a sceptre in one hand and a sword in the other. His name was Pride. And throwing Nelly and Ulenspiegal to the ground, he said, "I am God." Then beside him, mounted on a goat, appeared a ruddy-faced girl with bare breasts. Her gown was thrown up, her eyes sparkling. Her name was Lust. She was followed by an old Jewess picking up the shells of seagulls' eggs. Her name was Avarice, and a gluttonous monk, gobbling chitterlings, cramming himself with sausages, and gulping incessantly, like the sow on which he was mounted. He was Gluttony. Then came Sloth, dragging along pale and puffy, with lacklustre eyes, chased by Anger, who drove her with a goad. Sloth wept and lamented, and fell to her knees, overcome with fatigue. Then came lean Envy, with a viper's head and pike's teeth, biting Sloth because it was too leisurely, Anger because it was too lively, Gluttony because it was too replete, Lust because it was too red, Avarice because of the shells, and Pride because of the purple robe and crown which Pride wore. And the Will-o'-the-wisp danced around, and speaking with the plaintive voices of men, women, maidens, and children, they said, moaning, "Pride, father of ambition, Anger, source of cruelty, ye slew us on the battlefield, in prisons and by torture, to keep your sceptres and your crowns. Envy, thou didst kill the germs of many noble and beautiful thoughts. We are the souls of persecuted inventors. Avarice, thou didst turn the blood of the poor into gold. We are the spirits of thy victims. Lust, Lust, companion and sister of murder, the mother of Nero, Messalina, and Philip, King of Spain. Thou buyest virtue and rewardest corruption. We are the souls of the dead. Sloth and Gluttony, ye defile the world and must be swept from it. We are the souls of the dead. Sap germinates in dung hills. 7 is bad, but 7 is good. Stupid doctors have wise pupils. How can the vagabond louse contrive to have both coal and enders? And the Will-o'-the-wisp said, "We are fire, the avengers of ancient tears and pains of the poor. We take vengeance, vengeance on the lords who hunted us, human game upon their lands. We are the avengers of useless battles, of the bloodshed in prisons, of men burst alive, of women and maidens buried alive. The avengers of the past of blood and chains. We are fire, we are the souls of the dead." And these words, the 7 were changed into wooden statues without losing their original forms. And a voice said, "Ulenspiegal, burn this wood." So Ulenspiegal turned to Will-o'-the-wisps and said, "You who are fire, fulfill your mission." And the Will-o'-the-wisp surrounded the 7, who were burnt and reduced to ashes. And a river of blood began to flow. Then from the ashes came forth 7 other figures. The first said, "I was called Pride. I am now Noble Courage." The others spoke in like fashion, and Ulenspiegal and Nelly saw economy rise from avarice, vivacity from anger, appetite from gluttony, immolation from envy, and, from idleness, the meditations of poets and philosophers, and lust on her goat, was changed into a fair woman whose name was Love. And the Willo the Wisp danced round them joyfully. Ulenspiegal and Nelly then heard thousands of gleeful voices of hidden men and women singing in the sound as of castanets. When over earth and sea the seven rain transformed, men lift up your hands, for the happiness of the world will have arrived. And Ulenspiegel said, the spirits are mocking us. Then a mighty hand seized Nelly by the arm and hurled her into space, and the spirits sang. When the north shall kiss the sunset, that will be the end of ruins. Seek the girdle. Oh, said Ulenspiegel. North, sunset, girdle, you talk in riddles, gentle spirits. Then they said gleefully, North is Holland, Belgium is West. Girdle is alliance, girdle is friendship. You are wise, gentle spirits, said Ulenspiegel. Then again they sang gleefully, the girdle, poor dear, between Holland and Belgium will be woven of friendship, a fair alliance. Merat en duet, merodu blue. So would it be. But if not for the Scheldt, poor dear, were it not for the Scheldt. Ah, said Ulenspiegel, such is our lamentable lot of the tears of men and the laughter of fate. Alliance of blood and of death, were it not for the Scheldt, answered the spirits. And a mighty hand seized Ulenspiegel and hurled him into space. Nelly fell to the ground, rubbed her eyes, and saw only the sun rising in the golden mist, the blades of grass all tipped with gold also, and the sunbeams gliding the plumage of the sleeping seagulls, so that very soon they woke. Then Nelly looked at herself, and seeing she was naked, she dressed herself hastily. Then she saw Ulenspiegel also naked and covered him up. Thinking he was asleep, she shook him, but he lay like one dead, and she was seized with fear. Have I, she said, killed my beloved with this balm of sight? I too will die. Ah, still, awake, he who is cold as marble. Ulenspiegel did not wake. 2 nights and a day passed, and Nelly sat and watched her lover in feverish grief. Now early on the 2nd day, Nelly heard the tinkle of a bell, and saw a peasant carrying a spade. Behind him walked, taper in hand, a burgomaster and 2 sheriffs, the parish priest of Stavenice, and a beadle holding a parasol for him. They were going, they said, to administer the sacrament of extreme unaction to the worthy Jacobson, who had become a beggar from fear, but who, when danger was at the end, had returned to die in the bosom of the Holy Roman Church. Presently they came face to face with a weeping Nelly, and saw the body of Ulenspiegel stretched on the grass, covered with his garments. Nelly fell to her knees. Daughter, said the burgomaster, what are you doing beside this dead man? Not daring to lift her eyes, she answered, I am praying for my beloved, who fell here as if struck by a thunderbolt. I am alone now, and I would fain die also. Then the priest rejoiced, saying, Ulenspiegel, the beggar is dead. Praise be to God. Peasant, dig a grave with all speed. Take off his clothes before burying him. No, said Nelly, rising. They shall not be taken off. He would be cold in the earth. Dig the grave, said the priest to the peasant, who was carrying the spade. So be it, said Nelly, weeping. There are no worms in the sand and lime, and my beloved will remain fair and whole. And bending over Ulenspiegel's body, she kissed him distractedly with sobs and tears. The burgomaster, the sheriffs, and the peasants were touched, but the priest ceased not to exclaim joyfully, The great beggar is dead. Praise be to God. Then the peasant dug the grave, laid Ulenspiegel in it, and covered him with sand. And the priest said the prayers for the dead over the grave and knelt round it. Suddenly there was a great movement under the sand, and Ulenspiegal, sneezing and shaking the sand from his hair, seized the priest by his throat. "Inquisitor," he cried, "you are burying me alive in my sleep. Where is Nellie? Have you buried her too? Who are you?" The priest cried aloud, "The great beggar has come back to life. Lord God, receive my soul." And he ran like a stag before the hounds. Nellie came to Ulenspiegal. "Kiss me, beloved," he said. Then he looked round him again. The two peasants had fled like the priest, throwing spade, chair, parasol and all on the ground to run the better. The burgomaster and the sheriffs, stopping their own ears in terror, lay groaning upon the grass. So Ulenspiegal, went to them, and shaking them, he said, "How can you bury Ulenspiegal, the spirit Nellie, the heart of Mother Flanders? She too may sleep, but she cannot die. Come, Nellie." And he went his way with her, singing his sixth song. But none know where he sang the last. The end. Well, that's the tale of Ulenspiegal. Well, more than that, it's like the last adventure of the Ulenspiegal. That's really interesting, the Willo the Wisp, because over here in the UK, Willo the Wisps are amazing fae beings that attract you towards them and make you want to move closer, and they are just wow. They are not dead souls or people in the that's not but we don't believe that. There's something quite different over here, Willo the Wisps. But did you notice how I was talking about applying the balm? Well, the balm will have been the hallucinogenic, and all that may have been an hallucination, but still, it's amazing how that coincides with what we would do in the UK regarding the flying ointment and the hallucinogenic balm and stuff, and it's like the same in this story. So I really like this story. It was really good. I hope you liked it, Orange, because it is a Belgian fairy tale from 1916. Hopefully you will understand it, and maybe even have heard of it or something. Thank you for listening, and many blessings.